Someone asked me, why, if I'm going to speak on camera over matters such as a missing child, why wouldn't I dress up, as say put a dress on, as well as wear makeup? And I had to, in fact, answer that individual, in fact, many, by stating just this: I allow my mouth to dress me and not the other way around. I repeat once again, I allow my mouth to dress me and not the other way around. See, to sit anywhere and discuss important matters, such as in the room that involves young children going missing, or anything pointing to, say, a kidnapper, or even them somewhere possibly trying to escape a kidnapper right now, in the area of a search and find, and yet they're nowhere to be found, is to know and understand grown, fully developed adults, many a times when it comes to discussing these matters, we in fact don't put our looks before our very own mouth, which contains information, which contains a brain. See, a young individual like me on the way to almost meeting the age of 40, anytime I sit and I speak any young child, anybody's missing child, I am not, in a sense, interested in putting my looks, despite me looking somewhat fashionable and yet not flashy and yet hip, because this is me even off of camera, and yet with no interest of showing off involved any of. But anytime I sit anywhere discussing a matter such as this, a young child baby who might be an adult today, is to put my looks on the back burner and put the very heart of the matter up right in front of you. The voice, I'm saying, an individual's mouthpiece, which contains information which is backed by a brain. The brain right here should be the most important. The brain stating information, because once again, the voice is in fact a vehicle, right? And so I just think when people are discussing missing persons, their looks shouldn't even really be a part of the very thing, as in being the main focus. Because if it is, then that in fact takes the eyes away off, say, this young child who went missing, or many young children, to make various videos and allow your looks to be the very thing which overglazes a missing child story, is to ask, why are you even there in the first place? Because are you there to present information, or are you there to show off, say, just your looks? So to just sit showing off looks is to go do something else. Go sit and be a part of MTV or something crazy in that realm and matter, because real mature adults such as myself, when we're discussing stuff, we put our looks to the side. Me sitting here trying to put on a dress skirt to impress, like I'm on a news channel, or put on some makeup as I was told to put makeup on and take the glasses off, that's highly irrelevant. A child is missing. A young adult is in fact missing. So moving on, let's focus on what is in fact important. That's what's wrong with America already. Things are too focused on the looks, and it's not focused enough on the brain. And yet to use the brain is to help solve, as in identify and ID. If you're interested in watching ID, as in investigation discovery, the link is provided below. Moving on. I don't have time for those type of things. So, disappearance. My question today stands: the disappearance. Could two individuals have in fact played a role in Asha Degree's disappearance? It's my question. I got my notes, as I usually do, along with my clip. Yes, I do. So let me see what I wrote out, because I wrote this out yesterday. But to not rehearse anything, which I don't do anyway, is to in fact read it back to you. So let me see how many pages. I got 8 pages here written. So I'm going to read this out about my questions about her disappearance and if 2 individuals could have been involved. Hopefully these notes are precise, as in not a lot of mistakes, because I didn't proofread before checking it. I didn't really. And my grammar, despite me being a writer, I'm a creative writer. So when it comes to that, people's grammar, sometimes you use slang and all that other stuff, but pardon the grammar of individuals being themselves. So let me see. Two individuals, as in 2 persons, could have 2 adults been involved in this young child's abduction. So let's see. Let's go into the notes right quick. If an abductor wanted to really take Asia, why wouldn't he have just took her in the daytime like all other abductors have done in the past, in the present? I'm questioning that. If an abductor really wanted to take Asia, why wouldn't he have just took her in the daytime like all other abductors have done before? See, all over the world, most abductors, I'm thinking, do their dirty work in the daytime, and yet not around, say, the time of 3 a.m., 4 a.m., or possibly even 5 a.m., unless a child has to walk very far somewhere to, say, catch the bus to get on the bus. So, why in fact would an child abductor, take it upon himself to try to go and abduct a child at that time? Because 4 a.m. is in the middle of the night, and we know that majority of individuals are in fact asleep. But yet and still, why do that? What is his point in position of saying, you know what, I'm going to take it upon myself to plan kidnapping a 9-year-old child? Let me see. What is his point of saying, I'm going to, in fact, kidnap, abduct, whatever you want to put the word as, I'm going to do that very thing and do it possibly at 4 a.m. when people possibly could be asleep. And not only that, after I do that very thing, I am going to then take her book bag and bury it in the dirt where it could be possibly found or unfound. And not only that, I'm going to trail some candy wrappers along to make it look like she was eating candy and just threw the wrappers, say, out of her purse or her bag or whatever the candy was contained in. And not only that, I am going to put a pencil and a marker, as well as her wallet, and some said a photo of a young child that nobody can seem to recognize, and yet it wasn't Asia. Not only that, I'm going to take and put her bow tie, not her bow tie, I keep always saying bow tie, not bow tie, her hair bow. I'm going to put her hair bow, all this stuff, in a shed away from the book bag that I just recently buried. Was that a half a mile away? How far away was that shed buried from that young child's bag? But that was in 2 different locations of burying a bag and then burying other articles in which I named. Those 2 things was placed in 2 different locations from each other. And not only that, a abductor or kidnapper, whoever, why would they think I'm going to do that? But not only that, I'm going to plan it before. What was a purpose in that? See, even that has to have some type of motive involved. And I said that in my other video. To commit a crime like that at night, I'm thinking you would have to have a more heavier motive than, say, just kidnapping and snatching up a child. You have to. That sort of thing that will play out like that will be like a ransom. Say some type of drug deal gone bad, or drug deal that done went on between, say, a parent and a drug dealer, and say the drug dealer somehow got the child involved on purpose because the parent might have in fact been a drug addict and yet owed that drug dealer money, but the parent might have not had the money to pay the drug dealer back. So the best way the drug dealer would deal with that is through, say, a form of ransom, holding that over the parent's head and even over the child's head, that, look, we need our money. Let me see. The drug dealer would call and contact the parents and say, look, we need our money by such and such time and date. And not only that, you in fact have a heavy deadline, and we're holding this over the child's head. And if you don't give it to us by then, we are going to in fact kill her. Right? That's a ransom. Somebody call you on the phone, possibly in the middle of the night, or even in the daytime, or whenever they choose to do it, and they threaten you with fear that they're going to either take your child because money wasn't paid over drugs in a drug transaction. Yes, that sort of thing happens, possibly every day. I could see the mafia doing things like that. I could see drug cartels doing things like that. But I could also see drug dealers, even so, more so young drug dealers and even older ones, threaten you and your child's life in the manner of someone getting killed, and more so a child, if money is not in fact delivered by such and such time and date. I can see that in fact happening as in at play. So that's why I question this time frame of the 4 a.m. Was someone in the household in fact using drugs? Were they using drugs or addicted to drugs? I can't really see nobody doing that sort of thing for, say, painkillers. You never know these days. But was someone in fact using drugs of some form and yet failed to pay the drug dealer? Because to not pay the drug dealer is to in fact know a child is going to in fact come up missing. It has to, because even money plays a part in that. To have a ransom hung over a child's head and even over a parent, but more so the child seeming they were possibly taken, as in kidnapped, is to know if you don't pay those people that money, that child is going to in fact die that night. But I'm thinking usually a ransom. I'm thinking usually a ransom is spoken of days before, as in the threatening. Would a ransom be spoken of days before, as in calling the family and making threatening phone calls about that drug money needing to be in that drug dealer's hands? Let me think. Would that sort of thing have played and went down? I'm thinking usually a ransom or some type of thing you're given a matter of days. When I spoke about the timeline, not the timeline, that still plays into it even well. But when I spoke about the deadline, wording is messing up. Deadline. Usually for somebody to threaten your life and take your child and threaten death over your child, if you don't pay money in the form of funds, you're oftentimes given a matter of days. I've heard stories where people were given 2 or 3 days to give a huge lump sum of money. Sometimes the money is $500,000-$600,000. Yes, it is. When these drug deals and drug transactions that are going bad, as in not right, and people failing to pay, sometimes people will call somebody on the phone, threaten the family to even pay $700,000 even for bags of weed. Yes, weed. I seen a story where, in fact, somebody had called. They had called the family and threatened because somebody had failed to pay the weed dealer. And not only that, the amount of money they asked for was enough to go build not one houses, not two houses, but possibly three houses, depending on where you're building it. I'm saying the actual money size of the money. The money size of the money. I was right. The money size of the money. Let me see. To threaten somebody because they didn't pay, for some bags of weed, right? To get some weed from somebody and you don't pay the drug dealer, because he is, in fact, you call it as you see it, right? And say that individual threatened you that they might, in fact, kill your child, and they threaten you to send them like $700,000, that's a lot of money, or even $500,000 going down. Some of these people have been threatened over their life $300,000 to send them in the next 2 or 3 days. Yes, 2, 3, 4, 5 days to send them that type of money, and yet your average parent, mother, father, don't have that type of money unless say they're rich, which is how some of these young children, in fact, go missing, and even more so dead. And sometimes fingers and toes, as in the child's being cut off and sent to the mail to the parent, or even left on the car of the parent as a threat. We want our money. Give us our money. The mafia, they do that type of stuff, but once again, drug dealers, street drug dealers that try to emulate the mafia cartels and all that, they will do that very same thing because they want their money. They don't play about their money. To take a child because you failed to pay the weed man, the cocaine man, the crack man for the crackhead that's addicted to the drugs, is to know you're going to need money for that sort of thing. And yet to not have enough money is to say, bypass paying the dealer and tell him you would, in fact, some type of way give him the money, say later, as in exchange hands with him later in a different time frame. And yet to never come up on some money is to, in fact, have that child, and I'm saying fact too much, I'm getting carried away with a fact, but it is a proven fact that if you don't give the weed man or the cocaine dealer man or even the crack man for the crack hit, if a buyer don't give that dealer that money and all other money pertaining to the ounces of which was exchanged, then somebody is going to end up dead. They have to, because money was involved there. And remember, here in American society, money is a highly valuable thing, even in the room of exchange. So that's why the life is lost, because to make up for something that wasn't given is to take something away, as in somebody. Completely erase them out the picture. And not only that, sometimes send you some things as well as some treats and everything else. Send you some things and some treats and everything else to remind you of that very thing of which could have occurred. Yes, they would. See, people that do things such as ransoms, such as drug dealers, a lot of times I think they have whoever else below them do the dirty work, as in the dirty play, taking other people's childs and possibly snapping and cutting their finger off and sending the bits and pieces of children's fingers to the parents to remind them to pay. Some of them individuals, I think, would in fact send treats. Yes, they would send treats to the parents in remembrance of the child, of which you failed to do, as in not pay up in the realm of the dirty deed of the weed, as in marijuana, buying bags or exchanging hands with some and then failing to pay, or even crack cocaine, cocaine itself, however, what type of drug. I don't use those type of things, so I can't even tell you the ounces, percentages, calculations, measurements and anything to do with that. But I know if you don't pay, trust and believe someone is going to die. And a drug dealer would in fact find that sort of thing pretty and cute. I'm saying some of them drug dealers, I'm thinking they will be you've seen movies before, they will be the type of individuals that would get off on that type of thing, even taking a child because money wasn't placed in their hands as in a payback. So to think that type of thing is funny and cute, to take somebody's child and let the parents know as an alarm them, is to say plant some treats somewhere. Yes, treats. Plant some treats just enough for you to remember what you done. You failed to pay. To play the game, as in to make a bet, even in the form of drugs, is to play the game right. And yet you exchange drugs, but you didn't pay up. So you're going to have to, in fact, remember what you done, as in whichever parent, if even Asia parents or one of them could have in fact been a smoker of some kind, or even a full-blown drug addict. And yet they don't even really look like the type, but there's many high-functioning drug addicts that stand amongst us, and yet you never even know. You don't. Somebody in my family was full-blown cracked out, and I didn't even know. Matter of fact, the majority of us didn't even know, and they didn't even wear sunglasses. They was just full-blown cracked out, everything. And yet none of us knew. And I'm thinking to myself, when I think about it right now, how could we not know? Because see, to be an analyzer and deep thinker is to see certain things for what it is, but let that thing bypass your eyes is to know there are highly functioning drug addicts right amongst you on which stand, and yet you don't even see them. Even in paying attention up close, as in looking in their eyes, if their eyes are bloodshot red, and yet many of them handle drugs so well, as in being so used to using them and using them so long for over the years and time spans and stuff. Some of those results of even drug use doesn't even show in their eyes or even in their bodily, because remember, they're used to using it. Some of them have been even using since they were younger, in their younger days. But going back to what I was saying, a drug dealer would have his team of people or somebody to plant some candies or some treats or something in that form of that manner, which makes me even think about Asia's wrappings, candy wrappers. If her family or say parents or nobody had nothing to do with this, and say some drug activity went down as an involved where the parents may or may not want to speak on, which could be why they might not have wanted public attention drawn to them and getting interviews. See, there's more of a reason of why they don't want that, because there's secrets they're telling, and yet even drug activity could have played a part, as in either one or the two being involved in drugs, as in a user and abuser, or both, one and the same, or something like that, connecting. If you're a parent that has drugs in your house, and if you're a parent that has drugs in your house, say being a user, and yet you don't sell, that sort of thing, you still wouldn't want to pay attention. You wouldn't want others to pay attention to, as in bring light onto the family and shedding it. You wouldn't want to be seen speaking on too many cameras, even live, outside of Montel Williams or Oprah Winfrey or any of that type of shows, CNN with Larry King. You wouldn't want any of that type of information of, say, drugs being found in or around you. When I question why doesn't the mother want to be seen televised constantly over and over in Asia stories to be brought to light, there's more to that. There's more underneath it. And yet, say if one of the two could in fact been a drug user, I could see why she wouldn't want the lights on her. The lights would in fact go dim. In broad daylight, yes. If somebody is a user in the house and the child, if somebody was a drug user, say a parent was a drug user in the house or anything. I'm just speaking of possibilities. I'm not saying that this occurred, but I'm just using an example. If something like that would have in fact went down, you wouldn't want any light on you. You would in fact possibly hide away, as in not being scoped out on national TV. Because see, even forward individuals and being able to look and see sometimes can even see into that where say some of us can't. The drug detail and a person's bodily manner while they're doing interviews and all that other stuff on national TV talking about their child came up missing. Sometimes that certain stuff like that sometimes doesn't bypass the critical eye of other individuals, say outside of myself, who can see and spell drugs for what it is right in front of their face. They will be able to see that thing. Why is that man or woman, say, leaning in the camera like that on national TV talking about their child? Why are they in fact sitting like that? Why wouldn't they sit up straight when talking about a missing child? There's behaviors in drug use is what I'm saying. And yet to not be found out is to not take it there as in being seen fully on national TV for people to be calling you out. There has to be a reason why Asia's mother doesn't want to be fully seen all over national TV and didn't want to be seen, as well as her child's story, because even a right-minded thinking individual would know to put a child's face as in even her story, as even it being filmed on a place like Lifetime, it's enough to put enough footage there that somebody will possibly see her. Because to run and air missing persons nonstop at any random time of the day, it's a no a witness could possibly live somewhere in another state if somebody skips states over, two or three states over away from her, or where she came up missing. If that type of thing, see, because to want information to be out there is to put it all the way out there in relation into connection to a missing child, wanting them to come home. You don't just put that on the local news, because remember, it's 7.8 billion of us in this world. Media like that, such as a missing children or a missing child, needs to span all across the globe so that all eyes can see. Because you don't even never know where a young child could be. She might be in another whole different country. I seen a story about a father. It was a grandfather that adopted or got custody of the grandchild. I think the son, his son's child, which would make the grandfather of, that was his grandchild he had custody of. But the father had in fact took the child and skipped town or something like that crazy. But even some of these individuals that kidnap are willing enough to go to other countries, which in fact is prone to sex trafficking. And not only that, to have that sort of thing go on is to know the television is the most widest broadcasting spanning device. So you want to plaster your child's face enough everywhere so it could be seen even in another country, because even Lifetime plays out in other countries. Somebody might see that and say, see Asia's picture at the end of the story, as in the film or the movie or whatever being played, see that missing person's poster and say, you know what? They showed the age progression photo and I seen a girl like that walking down to the grocery store. That's why it's so important to put these type of things out, span them outside of local areas is what I'm saying. You put it on platforms where it goes all around the globe. And I'm thinking that family should have allowed movies and TV shows and everything else to be made about that young girl's disappearance. And yet to not want that is to stand questionable. So going back to what I said, that was a long drawn. Yes, it was. It was long drawn telling as well as highly compelling, let me tell you. You can't make this type of stuff up as you go, and yet you can. I freestyle, well, I used to. But anyway, so a ransom. Let me see. So a drug dealer will in fact But see, a drug dealer more than likely, I don't think, because I haven't really known too many, and yet coming from the hood environment of where I came from and escaped myself, leaving out. That's not to be funny, but it is because of the type of stuff you want to like get away from. But anyway, so just the environment itself, you don't want to be there where I came from. But saying what I'm saying, it's just a play on words. But I don't think a drug dealer, even in the form of Ransom and his team of people, are going to plant a child's candy wrappers. I can't even really see a black male adult or black male figure even doing that type of things, because even he will be the type of person fearful of the dark. I'm saying a drug dealer. Trust and believe, you got some very highly, look at any movie, TV show. Some of these drug dealers ain't as bold as they pretend to be. Some of them are just as timid and soft as a young child. Many of these black men out here that are full-blown drug dealers, more likely they will take a team of people with them, 5, 6 people, just so they can get around in the dark. Right? I'm thinking, I can't really see a male black drug dealer going out there, or even his team, because see, that would in fact be the purpose of a team, is to go out there together and not just be out there in the dark. I can't really see, because black folks, I understand the rational fear in relation to black folks and what they're going to do and what they're not going to do, and yet a person with mental illness would in fact go out there alone. Yes, they would. But to be kidnapping somebody and them say you're trying to keep them in the car, as in them not fighting their way out, why a question of 2 individuals could have been involved in this, because a young child will try to find her way out of the car if she's in question, if something's going wrong. And a young mind, yes, alarms, buzzards, and everything else will go off in the child's mind if somebody they park their car, get out and plant some stuff. You would need somebody else to take you. You would need somebody else, in fact, to go with you. Let me see. I was going to say to take you there, as in out there. But you would need somebody, in fact, to go with you, just in case you need to restrain a child. Yes, you would. I'm thinking. Many of us that don't know how those type of things, all we can do is sit and question, which is why I'm stating this right now. Okay, wait. So, I can't see a drug dealer say imposing a ransom on a family, and I can see them doing that, but I can't see them say putting rappers that far away from the house. Because see, a drug dealer, possibly the mindset he got, the crooked and crazy ways, they do stuff that's petty and possibly funny to themselves, enough to say, probably take it upon themselves and leave not only her book bag on, say, the father's car or on the doorstep, but possibly the wrappers to go with it. Because that type of thing freak you out, as in speaks out that, look, I told you we need our money. And not only that, just enough to know that you got the bag as well as the wrappings that we said that we was going to send, is to in fact leave it there on the doorstep. Lay it there in the middle of the night, or on somebody's car, say the parent's car if it was parked in the driveway or out in the front. But I can see the doorstep more than anything. A drug dealer and his team will possibly leave it right at the house, because they told you. You made a promise and you didn't keep to the promise, and this is what in fact happens when the promise is not kept as in made. This is how a bad drug deal goes down. That would have in fact been the message. And not only that, I could see even them leaving multiple phone calls or even multiple voice messages on the parent's phone, Asia parent phone. And not only that, they could have possibly took it upon themselves to even write a letter. And not only that, possibly a love letter, because it was Valentine's Day, wasn't it? See, a sick individual like a drug dealer who likes to play games and go down because even that is a game in itself. They call it a street game, don't it? Of selling drugs. That's a perfect match for a drug dealer to do, to say, take it upon himself to do something crazy like that. Write a little love letter, right? or even have Asia write a little love letter or something crazy and sit everything right on the porch for the parents to find it. Because it's Valentine's Day, and not only that, it's their love anniversary. That's what somebody would want to do if they really want you to know who they are in a ransom, as in identifying them that they took Asia. Some people can't even think that far, and yet I can, because to help to slowly unsolve a mystery as an unsolved mystery is to report it in a sense of writing down your notes, thinking and problem solving skills. I'm thinking a ransom is a message, right? And for a drug dealer to do that thing is to threaten for money, and yet for the parents to never say that sort of thing didn't occur, could say, well, maybe they left it hidden. Maybe they didn't want the police, because see, if it would have happened, and say they didn't, because it looked like, let me see, they didn't say that to police, and I'm thinking they wouldn't have said it because they possibly wouldn't have want police to know they were in on drugs. The parents, as in on the usage and supply and all that other stuff, and they'll be them being close to that thing, the parents. Because what that in itself represents is a bad home life. It does. Because see, to be a drug user is in a sense put your children at harm's way. Because there's been known drug users to not really take care of their children at will. And yet even police will look at drug use in the form of foul play and say how you handle and possibly mismanage handling your own children. Because sometimes abuse is even formed in that, even in the drug use. You got what I'm saying? Because see, to put two and two together is to in fact add up. If say one of the parents, say the father or even the mother, was a drug user, and say somebody, a drug dealer, took a ransom and put it over the child's head, as in hung it over her child's head, the mother's child's head, then if drugs was involved there, then even that will be the question of why would the child run away? Could there have been abuse there, and then much more on top of the drugs? There's much more why the mom won't speak out about certain things, certain matters, because even drugs could have possibly played in that. You never know. She's not going to want to sit and let her face be shown anywhere in front of police and even have that documented down on record that her or her husband, which could or could not be the child's biological father, was involved in drug usage. Because the drugs, police will look at that from an angle that drugs could in fact affect the behavior of how a parent is interacting with their own child. Are they acting in the way of, this is my beloved child, or are they in fact beating on them? Because see, drug usage presents all type of things of in sporadic behavior and people acting out and showing out in various wild ways, even if they use drugs for so many years. Look at people who are addicted to, say, alcohol, alcoholics who have been drinking for 20, 30 years. Some of them still talk crazy, as in very disrespectful, and sometimes beat on other people despite them living and drinking that long. And yet I'm thinking even possibility could be even drug users that you can or can't detect that they are highly functioning drug addicts. Them people could be out in public and be one way and then go home and be a whole different storm, is what I'm trying to say. A drug user. They might present themselves out in public or even in mass media to be this one type of way, and then when they go home, it's like a shipwreckage or something crazy. I'm thinking, feel what I'm saying? Because to be on drugs is to conceal that very thing. So let me think. Where did I hold on. That's why the mother wouldn't want more attention on her, because then the police would start to scope out her house of what type of drugs was happening, who the father or mother could have been involved with, such as in relation to bag or drug deals gone wrong. Not only that, that will pose a sign of abuse could have in fact been going on. That will pose so much delirious things. Yes, it would, in the form of action and police going in, scoping further in the four walls of the house. Trust and believe that have drugs anywhere surrounding someone's house is for police to fully scope it out, as in the evidence and the trace back, because children just don't take it upon themselves to run away, and even run away in the middle of the night. That's abnormal. That's abnormal behavior. To run away at that time at say 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. 4 or 5 a.m. is completely abnormal behavior. It's out of place. It doesn't align with natural rhythm, even of the body in the realm of sleeping. If you're not a night owl, I'm saying. And usually a young child can or might not be a night owl, and yet to stay awake at that time is to once again question what happened. I said I'm trying to figure out what could have been so special about that time of day, such as 3 a.m. or even 4 a.m. around the time when Asia left, which that's around the time precisely. What could have been so special about that time of day, or even time or day, that person that's in the abductor could have picked? He could have picked any other day besides that day. What was so special and fundamental about this day of February 14th, 2000, early in the morning, crack of the morning, even before the sun hits the horizon as in set? What is so special about that date outside of it being Valentine's, and not only that, the parents' anniversary? Why would an abductor or kidnapper just take it upon himself to say, you know what, I'm going to step out at this time and I'm going to just take a child, with a possible clear motive behind it, whatever that reason is, but do it at that time when everybody else in abduction, and many of them caught, are going out in the full-blown daylight time and yanking children up? That in itself don't make sense. Okay, so if it rained at night, it's possibility that it could have rained before, as in the daytime, right? Which means a lot of people more than likely wouldn't have just been out as standing outside, even on the curb in the rain, heavy downpour as it's been stated. I'm saying more than likely if it was raining at night, it's possibility that could in fact been raining earlier that day. So if nobody wants to stand outside in the rain earlier that day, why wouldn't a kidnapper just took it upon himself to do it that day, earlier at that time, instead of at 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning? That doesn't make sense. A call out is a call out. You want somebody to call somebody out, I just did, right? And yet I don't know who, but yet I just called them out. What is the point in that? Because see, if you plan something, you could have even did that days before. I'm saying crooked action in which all this stuff stands is all crooked affair, right? And yet if a person is so good at doing this type of thing, which played out, the kidnapping, the crime, taking a bag and burying it, as well as putting candy wrappers, planting it in a child's hair bow, as well as her pencil and her marker, if you're so good at doing that in the first place, why even plan it? Because see, let me think. Criminals, in fact, okay, because I'm not a criminal, but I don't really comprehend this. A criminal, let me see, a criminal might in fact, let me rewind the tape. A criminal might in fact plan that sort of thing because he's used to getting it done. So I could have been wrong about that, but yet and still I'm still in question. if you're going to do that sort of thing, such as everything you did, including possibly helping the young child pack the bag, however you helped in that, then why not just do it in the daytime? Why wait till everybody is fully gone to sleep to say, you know what? I am just going to have a young child walk way down Highway 18 that far, knowing she could have been seen on the way by somebody, and which has been stated eyewitnesses. So when you look at that, that's almost like as if the child was really not meeting anybody anywhere in the first place. It almost seems. Because if a guy's going to do ransom, he's going to be much more closer to the house planning things and not way down there in the field somewhere. Or maybe he could, but I don't really see. And he would leave a note, as in a love letter, say Happy Valentine's Day. He would do something crazy. You seen movies? And not only that, if a criminal is used to doing that sort of thing, he would look at how many children is being snatched up in the daytime, and yet many of them go missing for years, forever. And some of them don't return home, and yet they're being scooped up in the daytime. So why wouldn't this individual have wanted to do it in the daytime? That's what I'm asking. Because how all this stuff is set up is almost as if Asia was in fact not running anywhere. I'm saying from anybody, as in going anywhere in the car with them. Because see, a kidnapper is not going to make a child run. A kidnapper is not, or abductor is not going to make a child walk miles on end so that he can meet her somewhere. He's going to in fact possibly sit at the end of the block, as in where she lived, somewhere maybe down on another street, and not way down miles on end where even the police themselves can be randomly driving around at night, because even them do that at night. Yes, they do. Law enforcement drive around late at night, early in the morning in the pitch black. Yes, they do. They do that sort of thing because even crime is happening at that time. And yet to see random people, as in scope it out, being the FBI or whoever, driving around in a vehicle at that time, is to place yourself in whereabouts, as in where something could go down, or even in them type of areas, period, more so in the suburbs, police be on the lookout because to keep the environment safe. That's what the public pays for in taxes, to keep some environment safe, such as that. But to know that a kidnapper is not going to make a child walk that far. I'm supposed to be looking at the camera, and yet I'm trying to focus my thoughts. I apologize, my apologies. But to know that a kidnapper is not going to make a child walk that far, because see, a kidnapper will possibly know another kidnapper might get his child before he gets her. Because remember, she is in fact his prey, or you can consider it almost that, like prey, right? Because you're preying on a young child. So let's call it for what it is. So a kidnapper, he thinks, I'm thinking like other kidnappers, and he wouldn't want her to be snatched before he discovered her, as in finding her, as in her making her way miles down on Highway 18. I can't really see a criminally minded kidnapper doing that sort of thing. He would in fact want to pick her up much closer around her house. And yet to stand in question of that is to in fact ask, what was Asia running from? Because more than likely she wasn't running to anything, as in a car awaiting her, as in picking her up. That sort of thing, when I go back, once again, I'm repeating, but listen close when I say that, a kidnapper wants a child close. How is he able to snatch her in the first place? How is a kidnapper able to snatch a child in the first place? Doesn't the majority of kidnappers usually go up close to get a young child, where nobody's able to see her, and not be letting her or having her walk down somewhere where somebody else can get her and pick her up first? Because somebody might have wanted to see her being that young, and I'm thinking a kidnapper would even think that. Somebody might have been young, I mean, somebody might have seen this young child and might have wanted to offer her a ride to go back home. And yet, once again, it's been before she even got to the kidnapper, I'm trying to say. And yet, so eyewitnesses said they seen somebody, and that's what I'm trying to talk about. I don't think a kidnapper is going to even play it safe even in that. Because as the eyewitnesses supposedly said they seen her, a kidnapper would want to, in fact, prevent that sort of thing from happening. Despite it being nighttime. All type of people can be found driving around in the night. He wouldn't want that thing to happen. He would want to, in fact, prevent that by being closer to her house. Much more closer. Possibly just up the street. The end of the block. I said that. And so, let's go back. I said, why would he go for her on that day and in that time? I could see something like that happening in a hood environment, like where I came from, the ghettos of the ghettos. I can see that sort of thing happening. In the ghetto where I came from, I can see that sort of thing playing out. Yes, I can. And any ghetto all across America. Let's span all around the globe, possibly in Europe and stuff. I don't know how their ghettos is, but I can see in a hood environment more so that sort of thing happening. Because remember, hood people are out at night. Why not be if you're in the ghetto? Because remember, street lights are everywhere. They're all amongst you because, once again, you're not in a rural environment. You're enough to see, and it's not pitch black. In the hood, as in the ghetto, or where I came from, depending on where you're at, you might have a street light here. You went down maybe, let me see, 1, 2, 3. You might have went down 3 houses, 4 houses, and then there was another street light. But the travel is not that far. And from street light to street light, the travel is not that far. Because remember, to live in the hood, in the city, is to know every house is close together. You're bunched up like this. So the street lights is not really that far away, as in not that off. Whereas in a rural area, they place is not paved in gold, as in streets being dotted along the way as you go. It's just pitch black until you get to the next light, which could in fact be half miles away, a mile away, who knows. So I said before, I've been out to my grandfather's house in the country, and I don't want to put this out like that because I don't want to hurt his feelings, but I didn't like the experience of a simple fact. It was pitch black like that with woods everywhere. I didn't really like that type of thing. I didn't. Because to not know what is all around you at night, even though you're closed up and locked in the house, is, I don't know, man, that type of thing, it freaks you out. Especially when woods is in the area of which it was, right behind my grandfather's house and on the side. I didn't like that. I didn't like that. You watch too many scary enough movies as a teenager to say, although I was in my early 20s. So, wait, let me go back. I said I could see something like that happening in a hood environment because that environment is more lit up depending on where you are. Sometimes even main streets outside of small streets, I say where I live, but my street was a little bit more lit up, like the street light lit up. Yes, it did, but not a whole lot. But you got better chances out where I came from. If someone is a drug addict, such as a parent owes, I just spoke about that, about the ransom. I spoke about that, about the ransom, about the parent. But I'm still in question of if two individuals could have been involved in this. Whatever occurred. I said the Asha Degree story points in all directions because of so little evidence involved, which it makes it near impossible in solving her case. To have everything sporadic here and there and everywhere, and her whereabouts not being anywhere, but not only that, more than anything, her mother not putting herself more out there, being forward, is to not be able to lay a foundation as in the pieces. That in a sense is where the piece, this, let me say, this is in fact where the cookie crumbles. Let me just say it like that. Because if you got something over there and something over there and something over there, right? And yet everything speaks so loudly in the time frame being so messed up. And not only that, somebody want to supposedly kidnap a child between 3 and 4 a.m. It's to almost say this is, and not only that, on top of that, the mother won't come out her mouth and say something, and yet you know something more is there, as in what she's not speaking on, even the father himself and possibly the brother. It's to not have enough information to go on because even them are hiding something. And so to not even have enough evidence to move forward in it is to almost say this is where the cookie crumbles. That's what I'm trying to say. But to pick stuff layer by layer and even small detail, these little bits and pieces as in scraps, which you have left, is to sort through them and try to make sense. And possibly come across something as you're going, as in say something that comes out, right? Which can possibly help in the case of where even police probably didn't even consider. I'm thinking to question all different, you see, to question anything is to go angle by angle, even if the detail is small. You got what I'm saying? Say like a pen, like this pen. If I'm FBI or anybody, I would want to go out there and question what could this pen represent? What will be the meaning and the detail behind this ink pen, say, in relation to Asia's pencil being found and even her marker? Why would that sort of thing in fact be planted? Is there seed involved in this as a seeding process, and wanting to know to bring a resolution? Because even items like this being planet places represent something. They have to. That will be, if a killer was to know and was to be, say, well thought out and doing something crazy like that, then he has to kind of like know which each individual thing stand for. Say if her family had nothing to do with it, and say a killer or somebody crazy snatched her up and did that, then that individual would have to know the symbology of even such things such as this, like an ink pen, a young child's pencil, a young child's marker, a young child's Mickey Mouse bow, hair bow. All those sort of things represent something in relation to Asha Degree. It has to. Remember, it's her story, right? And so to know, I'm thinking to know and understand, because you done watch enough crime TV to understand what I'm getting at. Even ID, investigation ID, with the link is below of investigation ID. Even that can show you that there's symbology in little small pieces like that and being found. They each represent something if a killer did that. And yet if I was to plant a pencil somewhere, or even an ink pen, what would be the point of me doing that? See, I don't even fully understand the symbology in that, and yet a sick-minded individual would, because he would know even that represents something to the family, as in it has something to do with family matters in the realm of even what, say if the father or mother did it, even in the realm of they would know and understand the symbology, say in an accidental death or even a purpose death, if the family could have played a part in that, they would know the symbology of even what that stands for. If the family killed young Asha, the family would know what the pen represents for, because remember, they're placing it. So it will be reason for them to place that thing, right? For you to possibly take it upon yourself, being the FBI detective, to hopefully figure out and put the pieces together. And yet I'm thinking, what killer will want that type of thing? It's kind of freakish if you ask me. Because to do something like that almost says a motive once again stands in that. Even planting something, it almost seems, because see, I don't even really have a fully developed mind in the realm of say somebody planting, the art of planting something. Each thing will have to mean something. And not only that, it will have to carry a very heavy motive, even in relation to that bag, right? But if the parents kill her, even that wouldn't in fact have to present a motive. That would possibly present anger, I'm thinking, in them planting stuff and say wanting it to be found by police to make it look like a child abductor took her. If the parents were to say purposely kill her, accidentally kill her, to plant items like that in a sense speaks anger as in the motive. It would speak anger in relation to abuse, possibly physically abuse, verbal abuse, or even sexually abuse, and even a child wanting to run away, as in no longer putting herself there or allowing that to continue to take place by wanting to run away. And yet, say if a parent snatched her up to not leave, or even cracked her upside the head with something, it's to say she could have been killed right there on the spot, and yet to plant something somewhere, various items that represent that child, and even the possibility to represent the family, is to put it away from you in the form of distraction, right? Put it away from you, far away somewhat from the house, and then put other things that go with it, as I stated before, such as a pair of pants. A pair of pants to make it look like, I was going to say something else. When I'm about to say but I don't even know. Put a pair of pants there to make it seem like some other outside man or woman could have been involved with that, because as I said before, even women have been known to kill people and even plant pants or some male's garment type of stuff to look like a woman wasn't there, right? And so that's the only way I can see the parents really say planning something, because all that stuff is symbolic to them, and yet they wouldn't want police to know it was them. But why? See, there's so many questions. Even the bones represent death. I went and looked that up. I went and looked up various things. What does bones, was bones supposedly, and yet all this, that's the only thing I like about the internet, is you look up one thing in relation to police, FBI, what they stated, and then you go further looking up stuff. And some of this stuff could be truth, half truth, in the realm of somebody stating bones left by her bag. Not everything else, but just bones itself. And yet, who's to say, if that was very truth, who's to say those bones could have been planted next to Asia's bag? Because remember, if the contractor picked up the bag from where it was, then that's to say he could have possibly drugged the bag, as in dragged the bag, in a whole different area, say where the bag was at. So that's a starting point, getting to an ending point to where the contractor stopped in his vehicle, just enough to go pick up the bag. So as he was dragging it, maybe where he stopped at, that greater vehicle that you use to uproot stuff in the ground so that you can plant whatever foundation for a house to be built and laid on top of. For a man to be in a greater vehicle and say possibly drag a bag and not know he's doing it, and then stop because he noticed he's dragging it, is to possibly say find animal bones there. Because remember, to stop is to end up somewhere, right? Let me think. To drive a mechanicalized grader is to drive, as in plow through, and yet stop in the process. And if you see a bag there that you've been dragging it, or however he found it, if he was dragging it, and say there's animal bones there, then that wild animal could have died just randomly and been there for a long time. It could. That wild animal bones or whatever might have not been planted by anybody if it was there in the first place, the bones. And not only that, if the bones was behind, say, the tractor the grader that he was driving, if the bones was behind the wheels of the grader, then that grader machine he was driving may or may not have in fact ran over the bones, as in cracked them in the process. Even police would know something in relation to that. Because to drag a bag is to know you're going forward in motion. And yet if bones, and you're dragging something this way going, right? And then you stop because you see you're dragging a bag, then the bones would say possibly be either there on this side or on this side, but I'm thinking some type of way that grader machine would have in fact had to ran over those bones, wouldn't it? If that in fact happened. I just seen that about the bones. It was supposedly animal bones, but we don't know how real that is. People put stuff out on the information instead of questioning it. They just say what it was. But the animal bones would have been cracked from being ran over. That's what I'm trying to say. As in the stopping his footing on a brake, the animal bones would have been fully ran over. And in the distance of, let me see. Hold on, let me pause right quick. If you got bones here, a bag here. Was the bones, if there was bones, animal bones, would they be here or would they be here? Then that would, if the bones was here, animal bones, if they even existed, who's to say even that's real? But if they was there on this side and not in the front of the bag, they would still have to be in front of it. So that in a sense will almost be like that man's grader, the contractor, would have ran over the bones twice, because how was the bag? Let me think, because I keep thinking about if the bones got ran over by the wheels. But even the bag would have, the bag or something would have had to run over the bones twice. Either that metal or even the bag itself, or even the bones to be on the side of the bag. Something would have had to have run the bones over, and they would have had to been shattered in a sense. I'm thinking that's a stretch, and yet it still fits. I said that okay, when I question if there was two people involved in this, as in abducting Asia, could there in fact been two persons involved? And this is why I say that. How much time does it take to say abduct a young girl of 9 years old and possibly drop her off right after you took her, drop her off somewhere, and then return back onto Highway 18 just to bury her book bag and then go plant her other items at Turner Upholstery Shed? How much time is in that? I kind of want to know. An inquisitive mind wants to know. How much time would it take? How much time does it take to abduct a young 9-year-old girl, drop her off somewhere, and then return back to, say, Highway 18 to bury her book bag and then go plant her other items at Turner Upholstery Shed? See, I'm asking this because I don't think, go abduct a young child and say put them in your car in the middle of the night, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and then have her sit and wait in the car while you go plant some things. I'm thinking you would want to go drop that young child off because she may in fact take it upon herself to run away, as in run out the car and run back on Highway 18 to try to run back home. Wouldn't you think? Because first of all, it's dark and I can't really see no young child sitting in that atmosphere for too long, being highly frightened and afraid of the dark. That will be enough to make even a young child like a Asia afraid of the dark, paranoid, to want to get out, is what I'm trying to say. To want to get out and even go run behind the person that's planting the stuff. So could this individual have planted this stuff with Asia involved with them? As in the adult individual walking around holding hands with her, planting stuff and possibly helping her possibly having her help them plant the stuff. Because there's no young child, listen to me when I say that, there's no young child that's going to want to wait behind in a parked car with its lights fully off and the car not running enough to make noise where somebody can see it and hear it near the woods, and make her sit in that sort of thing as an environment, a parked car that's dark, would say the door's locked, and for her to wait for him to come back after he plants all these things. Either he's going to, because he is too pitch black for that type of activity to go down. So either he's going to want to take that child by the hand and have her walk side by side with him just so he can plant that stuff to make it look like possibly she's dead, as in dead and gone. Even when he planted the bag, that means that represents almost death. Or even when he planted the stuff and shed, he's not going to want to leave her behind in the car. And not only that, she's too young to even want to sit there and wait. Remember, young children get restless even in that, sitting in the car waiting for you to be walking half mile, mile on end, long distance mile walking, or even running, planting stuff. They're not going to want to wait that long. I can't think it, I can't see it. Remember, many of us have young nieces and nephews, and not only that, many of them, and you see how antsy they can get in waiting. A young child like that more than likely did not even wait in the car nowhere. She had to possibly be taken off somewhere, as in taken somewhere. Let's go back to square one in a sense. Where could she have been taken to and taken from? And what was a point in the mission, and even that? As in the unsolved mystery and pieces. To recognize something is to call it out. That child was not going to sit and wait in nobody's car and nobody's dark while some grown man lunatic is going to go put her stuff somewhere. And so either somebody else was in this car with that individual, the grown adult, enough to get Asia in that car, or made a false promise to her that we're going to take good care of you, get in the car. Another individual, if a grown man abductor is going to plant that stuff, he will possibly need somebody else to go with him. Because as I said before, he would need somebody to restrain that young child. Because she ain't going to want to sit there and wait for him. She going to want to take it upon herself and get out that car and go where he's going. In that dark. She would rather be safe with him, even if he's a full-blown kidnapper. She would rather be safe with him in her mind, because he possibly made false promise of a better life away from home where she came from. She would want to go everywhere he go, because that's how young children think. Because to in fact escape the dark at night, knowing you fear it, is to get out the car and run away from that very vehicle and go stand amongst the individual who made all these supposedly false promises, as in the kidnapper doing that thing to a child to get him in the car or whatever else. So how much time either one person was involved, which I don't think, two people had to even stop a young child from even getting out the car. See, listen to me when I say this. Two people could possibly have been involved in this in the form of, if a man wants to get out the car and go plant something, the other individual will have to stay in the car to in fact possibly restrain that child so that she doesn't make enough noise, and not only that, to possibly calm her down, where tears might start to flow as she's starting to see what's going on. Because for a child to sit there and see that a grown man is going to put stuff out somewhere, it's for that little girl to possibly start to question, why are we out here in the first place? I thought we were going somewhere. You made a promise or something like that, because kidnappers usually make promises to children. Young Asia would have possibly been sitting there thinking, say as he was getting out the car and she was left with some other older adult or something like that, Asia probably would have been thinking, I thought we were going somewhere. So why is he getting out the car, stopping? And not only that, we're sitting in the pitch black environment. Why are we here? Something don't look right about this. Trust and believe young children question that thing. And not only that, why does he want to take my book bag? He's taking my stuff to go bury it. Okay, so maybe a motive could have been involved in that, where even she knew, as in him telling her, you know what, I'm going to promise you a good life. I'm going to help you run away from your family, and you got to be in on this secret. We got to do this together. And we got such and such in the car with us to help with this process. So we're going to bury your bag to look like I killed you or did something with you to make your family think that you're dead or something crazy like that. Lunatic. I think I've seen too many TV shows to even know. Okay, so I'm thinking a young girl would have had to pass her bag to a person like that if he told her we going to be in on a secret like this. Because see, even a grown man would have had to make a little secret with her about, we're going to plant your bag, and we got to have somebody else with us in order to do this, so that you can feel comfortable maybe in the car while you sit here and wait on the individual, that man who was the kidnapper. He probably would have said, as you wait on me so that I can go plant the stuff, so that you ain't got to sit alone in a car by yourself. That seems like a stretch, and yet to go there, as in taking notes. I always take notes, because that don't seem right. That's out of place as well. Don't you think that's out of place for a young child to just sit in the car and wait for a grown man to go plant her stuff? I feel and sense somebody else was involved, or that man took her, possibly made a secret with her or whatever, and then dropped her off somewhere. But where? If he dropped her off somewhere, then he couldn't have been that far, as in the living environment. He more than likely had to live somewhere around in that area, because remember, there's timing in all this. The pieces, the puzzle pieces, there's timing in all this. There's a time frame with everything, and I said police even know that. There would have to have been enough time for even him to say, if he couldn't do this by himself, as in restraining her. I question even all that, because see, even if a kidnapper, let me try to think in my head forward, much forward. If a kidnapper was to take a young girl, know he only got so much time on the hands, and he know he got to plant this stuff, but he possibly got to do it in a way in relation to the time frame, then let me see. He possibly, if he didn't take somebody with him in the car, as in even giving them the keys to hold on to the car, then he would have dropped her off at, say, his house somewhere. In his house somewhere, I'm thinking. But not only that, I can't even see a young child going alone in that, as in being left at somebody's house to wait, even at a house for him, even if it's his own house. No matter how kind, caring, and gentle that kidnapper, abductor may have been, I still can't see a young child just allowing him to drop her off, and then she sits and wait until he go plan everything, and then he come back to the house where he took her. I can't see that, because I can't see that at all. I don't know why that is, because see, some of these grown men live in houses by themselves, right? And yet I don't. Other individuals live with me, and I'm so glad they do, as much going on in the world. But many of these grown men live by themselves. And not only that, to take a young child like that at that age home, to your home, being the kidnapper, abductor, is to know she's not going to want to stay home in that house alone by herself, as in the kidnapper. She's not. Trust and believe how a young 9-year-old think. You can't a lot of times even get them to stay home by themselves, even though many of them have keys or even live in the premises where it's a lot of people in the house. And say everybody leave out the house, they're not going to want to stay home by themselves. Because remember, to get dropped off to some man's house, even if he made false promises to you of a better life and he's a kidnapper, it's still unfamiliar territory, as in where she's going, the house of where he might have made her stay and wait while he's on the outside, way out in the woods somewhere, planning her stuff. That's unfamiliar territory. A child wouldn't have wanted to wait there, is what I'm trying to say. No, she wouldn't. No, she would have not. I know I would have not at 9 years old. Because to not really know where I'm at, though he possibly made false promises to her, it's to still possibly not know where I'm going. As in the environment, right? Just sitting there. Why would a grown man, a kidnapper, even allow a child to be, say, left alone that same night in his house? You got what I'm saying? Unless he tied her up somewhere in the house, because, yes, I'm saying, unless this kidnapper took Asia before he planted the stuff and, say, tied her up in her house. Because remember, if a young child don't feel right, as in sense something's not right, she might in fact take it upon herself to pick up the phone and dial 911, as in call the police. She might. Young children have more intuition than we give them recognition for. Let me tell you. If a young child is sitting there and she went with the kidnapper and say, you know, she say something about this doesn't right, even though he made promises to me. I'm here sitting in the house, in his house. He told me to wait here while he go plant my things. Something's not right. Why would he need to plant my book bag out in the dirt somewhere? Though he told me why he was doing it. He told me he was going to plant my bag to make it seem to look like I left the house, right? But I had to sit here and wait. You never know how a young child thinks. But I can't really see a young child being afraid of the dark, taking it upon herself to even be left not only in the house of, say, a man she's getting to know. I can't see her being left alone in his house, as even moving around in that house, walking around. That sets her completely, totally out of her uncomfortable level, in which they claim she had, and being timid of things. Irrational fears that children have. Why is she going to even take it upon herself, being 9 years old, to sit alone in some adult grown man's house? Unless, say, somebody other grown individual was there awaiting her arrival. As in, that grown man could have possibly set that up with somebody else. Because to be left alone at 9 years old in a house by ways of a kidnapper is, once again, to know that bells might go off in her head. And not only that, she can pick up the phone and call 911, get dispatch on the line and get to telling them, I'm scared, I want to go back home to mommy and daddy, and I'm at somebody's house that took me, and his name is, she get to telling too much detail, as in layer, right? And not only that, the police will tell her to walk possibly outside the house and look at the address. Yes, they will. That's enough detailed evidence in itself to look at the address, and yet they might not know the street, but FBI is quick enough to put pieces together, just enough to even fly an airplane in the middle of the night to try to see what house is what, as in flashing and scoping out a light, as in the address, even in the airplane. Police do all type of stuff, especially when a young child is kidnapped. They'll stop everything and have everybody in search and rescue go out. Yes, they will. So a kidnapper would want to try to prevent that. I spoke about the lady when she came up missing, Penelope Bax, when she got lost in the woods. That's why I spoke about the airplane stuff coming up missing. See, I come from the ghetto enough to know when police is flying helicopters and all that other stuff, because people done been in gang activity and all type of stuff. Police fly all type of abroad, and sometimes close down and chasing people where the people is running right past you as the police is trying to get them, even in a helicopter. As crazy as it sounds, yet it goes down. Ask even about South Central California, that type of stuff goes down. But back to what I was saying. So in order to prevent that sort of thing, of her getting on the phone calling 911, telling her whereabouts even in the pitch black, police can scope that out, an address with a helicopter, SWAT team and everything else. That sort of thing will pose problems for even him, because he would go to jail that night, as in on the return coming back, because he would see all type of police vehicles flying past him to get to the house of where he stashed her away, right? A kidnapper probably would want to prevent that. He wouldn't want her to have access to a phone, so to prevent that is to tie her up. Tie her up, chain her up in the basement. You see all type of movies in relation to that. That's freak show activity. It's sickening. Tie her up in the basement, chain her up in the basement, somewhere, chain up somewhere to bind these hands so they cannot get away while he goes off and plants stuff. Even in that will in fact impose fear in a young child that something is in fact wrong. I can't believe what I got myself into. That's what a young child more than likely would think. Why wouldn't she? I think if I was 9 years old and say somebody need to chain me and restrain me, something could possibly be wrong. Because remember, he said he was just going to take the book bag and plant the stuff. Something's not right. That's what a young child would think. So if he didn't bind her up, as in tie her up in her hands to not allow her to roam freely in his house, if that's where he took her, or to anybody else's house, then maybe he took her to a place nearby off of Highway 18 and allow her to be greeted in a friendly manner with, say, a woman that he was involved with or seen or whatever, right? With that woman, and say that woman had a friendly demeanor enough to say babysit and possibly watch the child. The more you unravel stuff, the more it's more telling, is what I'm saying. A child is not going to sit alone in nobody's house and wait for a kidnapper to come back. And not only that, because she's in unfamiliar territory, and that will spook a child out to be in somebody's house like that waiting anyway. The house could have been big, small, whatever. A 4-room shack, anything, right? But not only that, to get another adult involved is to have possibly, if he was a man, is to possibly have a woman involved at the house that's possibly a caring enough woman, in a sense caring or so, enough to watch her while you go out and plant your dirty work, as in her book bag and everything else. So you will possibly have, say, that woman female in on a crime, possibly planting her, you would possibly have a female in on a crime, I'm thinking, enough to possibly soothe a young child such as Asia that was timid. So to calm her down, may possibly, or not even that, if she was to, because if you're going to leave home as in run away from something, and you're going to run in the arms of, say, a kidnapper, but you don't really know that that's what he is because he didn't tell you all that, right? It's to see that a young child could possibly get that far away from home, think about what she may have did, and yet want to go back home and see tomorrow with her parents despite her wanting to be away from them. Because even young children do that type of thing. Sometimes they'll stand and cry, though they went to go spend the night over somebody's house, stand and cry about how they want to go back home. And yet to possibly deal with that sort of matter is to, say, have another individual involved in the form of female. Possibly, I don't know. Or maybe a guy. Maybe he could have a guy with her to stay at the house. But all I'm trying to say is whoever could have did that, right, could have been 2 individuals to even put Asia at ease if she was, say, taken to somewhere to sit and wait for his return. Because she might have started crying thinking about what she in fact did. Understand guilt with children. I said before, they go over people's house, get over the house and say, oh, I want to go back home to mommy and daddy, right? Didn't the cousin say, because I checked all into, didn't the cousin say that sometimes Asia wouldn't leave home unless her parents knew about it? She wouldn't go places unless her parents knew about it. So this could be the same thing. Or her getting to the kidnapper abductor's house and, say, crying and want to go back. So, let me see. How much time does it take to do all of that? As in planning the stuff, dropping her off. And I said about her not wanting to possibly sit in the car. I wouldn't have want to. where was she at when all this was happening? Where was Asia at as this individual was planning all this stuff? Did he have her chained up, tied down in the basement? Or did he have somebody else babysit her as well as house sit the house? That's what I'm wondering. And more than likely that house can't be nowhere located, say, too far away from where the individual has did all this. The timing. Check a timing clock. And not only that, while I'm standing here, notice my mom's clock, that Amazing Grace, that all that clock and all that with that singing noise. Notice how every video, the clock is going off enough to drive even you, the viewer, crazy. And so in my last video, I took the battery out to stop all that because I can't be involved with that. That sort of thing, it helps you lose your train of thought. Interesting how I spoke about that in relation to the time. To have a creative mind is to understand where to go. As a next, stay tuned with no commercials involved. So, were two people involved? Somebody answer me back. Leave it in the comment section. Were two people involved? Because there's no way all this type of activity could have in fact gone down without another person. Because see, the reason why I question that, because see, two people could have been involved even enough to even travel around on foot together to possibly what, get stuff done quicker and take the child on a way on about their way, right? But I don't know. Only a person that did this would know. I said all this because a young child, even leaving that child in that car, I'm telling you, could have ran out of the car, got the yelling and screaming to try to make enough noise, hoping enough somebody on Highway 18 would have seen her if she would have been in that car. Young children is known to put up a fit if they think something ain't right. Yep, I said that. I said that anything could go wrong. That's why I said there could have been two people, because at that time, or even in the daytime, but see, it's easier possibly for a man, I'm thinking, to pick up a young child in the daytime. I really don't know and understand the aspect of that. Because somebody said he could have locked the doors even if, but that's the daytime, right? To not allow her to get out the car. But even still at night, something still could have went wrong. Even in dealing with the child. She could have put up a fight or anything. She could have put up a fight in the car, realized what she had done and said, oh, I want to turn around and get out of this mess. What has happened? She could have put up a fight in the car. Yes, she could, right? Because see, that individual may or may have not sped out, and yet even tire tracks, I'm thinking, would be there if she got in the car with somebody, right? There would in fact possibly be tire tracks enough to show that. When you zoom off too quickly in the car, but maybe not, I don't know. But still, and yet still, a child could have put up a fight in the car if she felt something wasn't right. That will pose a problem. Yes, it would. It completely will pose a problem. But to prevent that is to take somebody else with you to hold that child down or calm her down or however. Because even if she put up a fight in the car and say she felt something wasn't right and she wanted to leave, as in get out of the car, right? How would an abductor be able to stop that thing knowing he's driving? Because even she could have, in fact, possibly, I keep saying in fact like it's a fact, and yet we don't even know, but it's becoming a habit. The more I speak saying fact in certain phrases and words, right? But if an abductor took a child at night like that, in early morning, rising, whatever, Um, what if she was to put up a fight in the car? How would the abductor or kidnapper even deal with that? If, say, she's in the front seat or even in the back seat, how would he stop or prevent her from that if his hands is on the wheel of the car? That's the question. Which is why I said he possibly would need somebody else. I'm repeating for like the 15th time. But I keep thinking and sensing somebody else had the keys to his car. If they didn't take her nowhere, if they didn't take that young child nowhere and say drop her off at somebody's house for somebody to watch her, I still keep sensing somebody possibly had the keys to that person's car. So she could have sat and wait, and not only that, been able to calm her down, because there's a restraining in that, as in preventing and stopping it. Because that little girl could have completely got out that car, got the running and screaming, even in the rain. You never know. Because to be too terrified is to allow fear to take over you, right? Somebody had to have, it had to be two people, and somebody, if they didn't take her to a house, they had to have, somebody else had to have the keys to his car. That's a mess in itself. Just enough for her to wait on him to go and return, as in dropping stuff and planting stuff or whatever else. I said that because how far, when it comes to the timing, and that person, say if they did drop her off somewhere and went back and planted stuff, the miles, I question the miles, the timing, the miles it take to get back from both locations. How many miles, I'm thinking, will get, how many miles, because that's a timing in itself, how many miles would it take to, say, get from the location where the things was planted and, say, possibly drop that child off to, say, that abductor or kidnapper's house? Could it have been quite a ways away? Could it have been much more further up the way? Mileage, miles, how far away is even the living, all that around there, how many miles, even the houses around Highway 18. Somebody could even be living somewhere around Highway 18. As I stated before, they could be living somewhere around that, and the child could have been kidnapped and yet bound up. Who knows? As in possibly still being alive, despite I said it's a possibility she could be dead, only because I said the bag was buried. And yet it's been stories of people being bound up, even in houses in close locations, say where stuff or wherever they were kidnapped from. Doesn't make sense. See, an abductor wouldn't want to, I don't think an abductor would have want to travel that far by car with her in the car, drop her off somewhere and then go back. And I really don't think, when I really think about it, let me go back. I really don't think an abductor would even want her out in that car in the middle of the night while he's planting things such as a book bag and a garbage bag and wrappers, because see, even a parent could wake up in the middle of the night and notice that their child is not there. even at that time. It's many of us that have to go pee in the middle of the night, as in randomly waking up, right? And so, in order for something like that to happen, is for a parent to possibly check on the kids and say, like the mother did, and notice that she's not there, as in gone, even at say 4 a.m., and then call the police right then. Right? They will possibly more likely be flying past him in their vehicles, and yet and still he will still be right in the environment. He will still possibly be in the same environment. I don't know if a kidnapper would want to really even take those type of chances. I'm wondering. That is spooky. The whole thing is spooky. So let me see. I said that. Say if Asha Degree was abducted by someone, could that individual have lived by her? Or could it have been, could they have lived by her? Or even be one of the children who went to school with her, say like one of the children's parents or something. I'm gonna make a video about that. What if it was like one of Asia's little school friends, and say it was one of their fathers who went to school? One of the children who went to school with her, say if it was one of their fathers, could one of their parents have done it as an abducted her? Is it possible? A man or even a woman, and yet a man will have to have planted those things, but who's to say a woman might not have? Because to have certain things in order to be able to see at night, as in buying equipment, is to know that's accessible for individuals to get out of even a store, hunting store, equipment store. What will be their motive though? What will be their motive if, say, one of Asia's young friends' parents abducted her? Did anyone have animosity, is my question, towards the family, or even disagreement with the family? I'm questioning still the motive. Could one of Asia's little friends from school parents have abducted her? And did anybody close or even around the family have any animosity or even a petty disagreement with the family? It's a question, because that in itself can pose as a motive. I'm questioning everybody, not just one individual. People were mad at me when I said about and spoke on me questioning the family, and yet when stuff like this happened, you question everybody. FBI already did. So let's see. Yep, I just said that. Could one of Asia's little friends say the father had a little pedophilia type of crush on her, as in notice and seeing she was cute, as in wanted her? If that sort of thing happened, say with a parent of Asia's friends, if one of her friends' parents was involved, more than likely, I don't think, if it was the father, more than likely he wouldn't have lived in the same house as, say, that child, because that would be evidence enough. The child would speak out and say something, and they would know where Asia's whereabouts is in the realm of a kidnapping. And so if it was, say, one of Asia's little friend's parents, such as a male or even woman that did this, more than likely they don't share a house with that child, and possibly not even with that child's mother, as in the mother, father, whoever. Because to know too much information is know that sort of thing is going to leak out of the house. It has to. People talk, even at school. And no young child is going to want to sit there knowing that her mother or father could have in fact kidnapped her friend, and they're living in the house all together, and yet the child is chained up somewhere in the basement, and yet the child never speak about it. That in itself will make that child that knows about that her father is a sicko and brought one of her little friends to live in their house amongst them, and yet bound her up and chained her, that's enough to change a complete behavior of a child Because remember, they're friends. That's enough to change that child's behavior who's still going to school and operating at school. Enough that a teacher will notice that something's not right. That child wouldn't want to eat or nothing else because remember, everybody's talking about it amongst her. Even parents and everybody else, detectives, everybody else showing up to her school. So that parent who could have possibly kidnapped Asia, say if it was a school child friends with Asia, if it was one of their parents, male or female, they would have in fact had to live outside of the house. That's what I'm trying to say. That was long, and yet I took it there. Also, young children are often known to spend the night over another's house. As in, young children a lot of times want to spend the night over other children's house. And so in me saying that, wait, let me see something. And so in me saying that, knowing that young children are often known to spend the night over another's house, such as their other friends from school, from the church, from playing in sports with other teams, they like to spend the night over other kids' house. And sometimes fathers are in and out of the picture, as in coming and going. Even fathers of young school children, just what I spoke about. Children spend the night over each other's house. A young girl is dropped off over her friend's house, and yet the only people that live there are, say, the mother and the child, right? Or even the mother and the child and the boyfriend, or the mother and the child and, say, a stepfather or whoever. And so, say Asia's parents dropped her off, or say over one of those individuals, whether they were part of the school community, church community, or even sports community, right? Let me see. Fathers are in and out of the picture, as in coming and going, even fathers of young children. Children spend the night over other young children's houses, as in such as teammates, schoolmates, church mates, as in people that go to church. But I'm thinking if she would have spent the night over the child's house, then the father couldn't have possibly been there, as in lived there, because he would have told on himself. He would have told on himself being a kidnapper, even living in the same house, because I said before that information would have leaked out to the community, because even children tell. They do, even when they're not trying to tell. So I'm saying that sort of thing has a way of slipping out, even with school children. When they get to talking on the schoolyard, they say too much stuff. Which is why I question, could a young girl's father could have been in on this and yet might not want to say. Well, why would he say if he's a kidnapper? But yeah, if one of Asia's little friends, say Asia spent the night, where could she have spent the night at, even leading up to those days? I'm saying outside of the house, what people, family have known. Was there anywhere she stayed overnight, right? Before, or even months before, weeks before, a year before, right? Hung out over her friend's house, right? I'm saying that because some of even these fathers don't share the same household. And yet from me being from the outside looking in, let me think. He couldn't live, he couldn't really share a house with none of Asia's schoolmates, classmates, schoolmates, gym mates, sports mates, church mates. That sort of thing couldn't have completely went down, I don't think, because it would have got found out. Because even young children like to gossip, as in talk, right? Tell stories to one another, as in them even keeping secrets with one another. And yet to be that young sometimes is to still not be able to keep a secret, to know your father might have in fact killed one of your little, not killed, possibly killed, but possibly kidnapped one of your friends, as in schoolmates or anything like that. That thing would have got all the way out. It would have got out so far, even school officials, authorities, whatever pertaining to police, they all would have been possibly surrounding the schoolyard, playground, school, everything. Yes, they would have. If that sort of thing was at play, the police would have been surrounding that thing, because as I said before, little girls like to talk. They do. They're little girl. They're little girls. They're social. And so to be social little girls is to sometimes be 8, 9, 10 years old, saying things and yet speaking too much, which could in fact possibly lead to somebody going to jail, right? Even if that's your own father, but yet who's to say? Would a little girl keep that secret? And yet, if the little girl knew, then still Asia would have had to be put somewhere, as in hidden. I'm asking questions. Video upon video in which I'm making in a YouTube format is nothing more than questions in which they stand today. That's all. And I think that's all to be said, as in a conclusion for right now, the here and now, and wanting to find out what happened to Asha Degree. I'm making video as in compiling them in a playlist right here on YouTube. This is the Asha Degree story. Had to take a time out my day in my own life to try to make sense of what could have happened to a victim, because to be kidnapped by anyone, by a grown man, woman, teenager, half adult, early, late teens, whatever, whoever did it, is to know there's in fact a victim involved. A victim involved. And so to never say be found years before, and here we are 18, possibly going on 19, 20 years, is to know there is in fact a problem there, as in a missing child. But to never be able to understand logic and reasoning skills, as in fitting puzzle pieces where they should match, as in placing them to try to gain the perspective of finding a match, even if it's in the form of DNA samples of anything like that, is to speak on the matter, the heart of the matter at hand, and say let's focus on physical appearances, as I spoke about in the beginning of the video. That sort of thing is highly irrelevant, as in unimportant. So therefore we focus right here on the matter. A young child who has came up missing February 14th, 2000. That is in fact the end of this video. May one day young Asha Degree return home, as in make her way to her parents, despite it not really fully looking as if it's going to go in that way. And yet who's to say, because possibilities, as my mom loved to say, miracles happen every day. No one really knows what the future holds. And so, in stating that, to end this video out, is to say, never turn a blind eye, as in never look away, especially when a missing child is involved. In her case standing open. The Asha Degree case right now has been fully open. Once again, yes, FBI need more information, as in further examination, needing more fresh eyes outside of just themselves, as in the public getting involved. And so to be a leader, as in which I stand, is to take it there, questioning all individuals surrounding that area, or where all items as in Asha's possessions have been found. So once again, don't allow a matter such as this to allow your eyes not to see it, as in turning a blind eye, standing up, walking away, as if nothing's there. Because so many of us, in fact, greet you right here on camera to helping your awareness that a child, which was once a child that came up missing, is still missing, yet once again in adulthood. She would have been today, not today specifically, but standing here in today, despite it not being her birthday, she would have in fact been a full grown, possibly loving adult. Because even her demeanor back then, as family described her, was that sort of child. Young, timid, possibly nurturing, as most young female children are. Never act like there's nothing there. Open your eyes.